Deborah Finley grew up in a lonely world filled with fear and violence. Her father left when she was just 3 years old.
I saw my father walking down the street with a suitcase in each hand. And so I ran to my mother and I asked, "Where's my father going?" And she said, "He's going away and he won't be back."
Her parents divorced. A year later, Deborah's mother met and married another man.
He seemed like a nice person. Unfortunately, as time went on, it was like a Jekyll and Hyde situation. It was very common to go to sleep to the sound of hearing my mother crying and pleading in the next room from her being abused. And it was very common to wake up to blood and glass everywhere because he would go into violent rages, my stepfather, when he would drink.
Deborah felt powerless against her stepfather's rage.
I was in constant fear and depression and just without hope and just feeling like there was nothing that I could ever do but just accept what is happening.
When Deborah was about 11 years old, her mother and stepfather, Gene, divorced. But 4 years later, they remarried.
It was very peaceful when he was gone. Unfortunately, he didn't change, so it was back to the same old fear and violence, walking on eggshells. And my mother, though, the one thing that was different was she started making sure she wasn't home.
When her mother wasn't around, 15-year-old Deborah became the target of Gene's aggression.
One day, my stepfather came home drunk on a Monday morning, and she was gone. And he just started ranting and raving. As I got up from the table with my glass of milk, he knocked it out of my hand and punched me in the mouth.
Deborah ran to her grandparents' house and called the police. Gene was arrested, but released soon after.
And I was just so tired of living in fear and violence, so I had called my father.
Her father had mafia connections, and he sent someone to kill Gene.
And about 45 minutes later, the doorbell rang. My stepfather was going to go to the door, and all of a sudden you heard blah, 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 and wood was flying everywhere. Well, someone had come and shot through the door. And after that happened, of course, they called the police. It was just a miracle no one was shot. Bullets went into every room.
Her dad was charged with his involvement in the shooting. The night before his court date, Deborah secretly met him.
So my father and I were sitting on the couch, and we were visiting after we had went out for dinner. The door flew open, and it was my stepfather with a gun. I jumped up, and I just said, "No, don't." And he was only a couple feet from my father, and he shot him in the heart, so he died instantly. And I was just in such shock. I just started screaming, and I ran down the stairs, and he ran one direction, I ran the other.
Gene was convicted of manslaughter and sent to prison. But Deborah continued to live in constant fear and confusion.
I became very doubtful of there being a God because I thought he made the bad happen and I wanted nothing to do with him because I thought that's a cruel God.
She married when she was 17 years old, but even her husband Kirk couldn't make Deborah's fears go away.
I went to substance abuse. I was just so depressed I couldn't sleep at night.
One night after Kirk went to bed, Deborah sneaked out to the couch to smoke marijuana and cry herself to sleep. A TV show caught her attention.
I heard someone on TV say, "Jesus Christ is the healer of the brokenhearted. And if you'll ask the Lord to help you, no matter where you are, you can pray this prayer." So I prayed and I asked Jesus to forgive me and come into my heart. It was just so amazing. I just felt this heaviness lift from me. And I felt so different. And after that day, it was so wonderful to be able to have peace.
Deborah started going to church and reading her Bible.
So it was such a wonderful feeling to find out that God is not the author of the bad, but he'll help you through it.
As Deborah grew in her faith, she knew that there was something she needed to do: forgive her stepfather.
When it came to my stepfather, I said, I can't do it. It's just not possible. Well, I knew that God said that we needed to forgive, to be forgiven. And I knew that I didn't have the strength to do it. But I found out that the Lord was our strength.
Not only was she able to forgive Gene, she was able to lead him to Christ.
We joined hands and we prayed, and he sincerely asked Jesus to forgive him of his sin and come into his heart. It was just so freeing. I can't find the words to express how freeing. Now I cry tears of joy all the time instead of the other. It's so much better.
Today, Deborah is a certified domestic violence professional. She shares her message of hope with women living in fear in her book, What Your Future Holds and What You Can Do to Change It.
And it's just so wonderful, and I've been able to go and speak to different women that are in situations where they've been abused and be able to share that there is hope and let them know that there's a God that's good.